I was recently at a dinner with a group of software engineers in Palo Alto, the kind of people who speak about the cloud as if it were a celestial realm where the laws of physics are merely suggestions. They were passing around a phone, marveling at the latest benchmarks of a new LLM. The mood was triumphant. They looked like they'd just conquered fire. To them, progress was a clean, upward-sloping line of code, a weightless dance of bits that could scale forever. But sitting at the end of the table was a lead architect for a major data center provider. While everyone else was toasting to intelligence, he was staring into his drink with a look of profound exhaustion. I asked him what was wrong, expecting a complaint about latency or bugs. Instead, he pulled up a photo of a rusted, humming substation from the 1950s, a tangle of corroded copper and leaking oil. "That's the cloud," he whispered. "We're trying to run a godlike intelligence on a cardiovascular system that's currently undergoing a massive heart attack." He told me about the quiet panic happening behind the scenes at places like Google and Microsoft. It's not the lack of algorithms or alignment that keeps them up at night. It's the terrifying realization that they have hit a physical wall. We've spent decades obsessed with the digital crescendo of software, ignoring the fact that our physical substrate, the energy needed to power this ascent, is trapped in a paradigm of incrementalism and bureaucratic decay. There is a growing sense that the big stagnation isn't just an economic theory, it's a thermodynamic trap. While the public debates if AI will gain consciousness, the people actually building it are realizing that without a radical return to atoms, specifically the high-density energy of advanced fission, the great digital revolution will simply flicker out. The era of Sci-4 supremacy is over. We are entering the age of energy sovereignty, where the choice is no longer between safe or fast, but between accelerating into a Kardashev-scale civilization or slowly suffocating in the dark. That opening anecdote really, it just crystallizes the tension we're examining today.
It really does.
Our deep dive is focused squarely on this terrifying thermodynamic trap that AI has found itself in. We're not just looking at models and software, we're exploring the raw physical requirements of this next generation of artificial intelligence and the radical, almost unthinkable solutions that tech giants are now adopting to break through this constraint.
Right.
It's a literal collision between the digital world's ambition and the frustrating reality of the physical one.
And that collision is where the story truly is. I mean, the core conflict here is that tension between the exponential ambition of compute power, that whole scaling forever idea the software engineers love, and the sheer grinding incrementalism of our physical infrastructure. We are dealing with atoms now, not just bits. And the only metric that really matters anymore is energy density.
So the future of intelligence isn't a software problem?
Fundamentally, no. It's an infrastructure problem, and it's one that demands a geopolitical, not just a technical solution.
Okay, let's unpack this then. When we talk about hitting a physical wall, we need to really quantify the scale of this hunger. I mean, we've been hearing about data centers using a lot of power for a decade now, but this feels different.
Oh, it's a completely different category.
Yeah.
The arrival of generative AI and LLMs is doing more than just raising demand. It is fundamentally rewriting global energy forecasts.
In a way that's, what, scary to the people who run the grid?
Scary is the right word, yeah.
Yeah.
Frankly, frightening to traditional utility providers.
Yeah.
You have this exponential curve running straight into a grid that was built on predictable, linear, static demand models.
So what are the projections?
If you look at the global numbers just for data center electricity demand, and this doesn't even count all the other industrial uses, it's forecasted to grow an astonishing 258% between 2023 and 2030.
258% in 7 years.
In 7 years. Think about what that means. You're essentially adding 2.5 times the current global digital load onto an infrastructure that is already, pretty strained.
And when you zoom into the US, which is really the epicenter of this AI build-out, the numbers must get even more concrete.
They absolutely do. Generative AI is expected to push U.S. data center consumption to a maximum of 390 terawatt hours TWSS by 2030.
390? To give people some context, how monumental is that?
That single sector, just powering digital intelligence, could account for 7.5% of the total U.S. electricity demand.
7.5%. That is a huge slice of the national energy pie.
It is, especially when you think about it. Just a few years ago, around 2020, traditional computing was maybe 2.0% of U.S. demand. So we're talking about nearly quadrupling the draw from the grid in less than a decade.
Just to keep these models running.
Just to keep them training and inferring. I mean, 390 TWAs, that's more electricity than entire large, heavily populated states use in a year. You're basically demanding a whole new energy system be built almost overnight.
Which brings up the obvious question. Why? Why are these new AI data centers so much more power hungry than the ones we built for, Netflix streaming or cloud storage? What changed with generative AI?
It really boils down to a shift in computational intensity and operational tempo. You can kind of break it down into three core factors that are creating this power density crisis.
Okay.
First, you have the algorithms themselves. Training a modern trillion parameter model is a fundamentally different task than running an email server.
Right. It's not just fetching data.
Not at all. The complex deep learning and the sheer scale of the data sets require higher sustained computational power. And every time you want to improve a model, the work needed to get that tiny marginal improvement increases exponentially. That's just the physics of it.
So it's not just the size, it's the complexity of the learning itself.
Exactly. And the second factor is the workload intensity. The traditional website might have peak times and then it idles.
Like a lunch rush.
Right. AI infrastructure is designed for continuous, intense computational workloads 24/7. Whether it's training a new model or running real-time inference for a big company, the demand is always on. These systems are designed to be maxed out, meaning they draw maximum power pretty much constantly.
And the third factor, the one that makes that architect at the dinner table so nervous, is the secondary consumption, the heat.
Precisely. This is the cost people often overlook. You're packing so much computational horsepower, these incredibly fast GPUs, into dense server racks that they need a huge dedicated amount of power just for cooling.
So it's not just running the chips, it's keeping them from melting.
Exactly. In older data centers, cooling might have been, say, 20–30% of the power load. In modern AI clusters, that ratio just shifts dramatically. If you can't get the heat out, the whole system just throttles and fails.
And this brings us to the hardware itself, because the hardware needed for this exponential growth is also hitting its own physical limits.
It is, and then it's leapfrogging them, demanding even more infrastructure. And the prime example, the one shaping this whole conversation, is NVIDIA's strategic move with its new Rubin architecture.
This is where it gets really interesting, because they're not just making a slightly faster chip, they're changing the blueprint of the data center itself. Rubin is the successor to Blackwell, and it sounds like it's totally redefining the scale of a computer.
It's a fundamental pivot. They're moving from selling components to selling an entire AI factory.
Right.
Rubin is designed as a massive multi-die system engineered to treat an entire data center cluster as a single unified computer.
To eliminate the bottlenecks.
At every single level, from the silicon all the way up to the networking. This is how they stay ahead, and it's how they make that exponential leap in capability that AI demands.
So let's get specific. The R100 GPU is at the heart of this. What lets it deliver that staggering leap? You said 2.5 times the performance without just instantly overheating.
It's all about extreme system-level engineering and advanced packaging. The R100 GPU uses a complex multi-die design. Essentially, it uses TSMC's advanced co-OSL packaging.
Okay, what does that mean in simple terms?
Think of it this way. For decades, there was a physical limit to how big you could make a single chip in a factory. It was called the reticle limit. To get around that, they've started taking multiple massive chips and packaging them right next to each other so they can talk at lightning speed.
So instead of one giant piece of silicon, they're tiling smaller, still huge pieces together seamlessly.
Precisely. It's like creating a massive silicon canvas with high-tech tiles. This effectively doubles the silicon area they have for logic, which delivers these huge performance gains. A single Rubin package is projected to deliver an astounding 50 PF/LOPS of FP4 precision compute.
50 petaflop/PS. That's just a terrifying amount of computational density in one spot.
It is. But raw speed, raw FLOPS, that's only part of the battle. If the data can't get to the chip fast enough, the whole system just starves.
Right, the memory wall.
Absolutely. We've been talking about the memory wall for years, but with trillion parameter models, you need radical solutions. The Rubin GPU is debuting HBM4 memory high bandwidth memory, 4th generation. This gives it 288 GB of capacity, which is huge, but more importantly, a staggering 13.5 terabytes per second of bandwidth.
13.5 terabytes a second. That's difficult to even wrap your head around.
It's what's necessary to feed those enormous models we expect to see in the next couple of years. Without that speed, the chips would just sit there waiting for data.
And there's another piece in this architecture, something specialized for long context models.
Yeah, the Rubin CPX, the context accelerator. This is where the engineering gets really specialized. When you ask an LLM to analyze a huge input like an entire company's code base or a library of legal documents, That initial data loading stage is usually the bottleneck.
It just can't handle it efficiently.
Exactly. The CPX uses high-speed GDDR7 memory and hardware dedicated entirely to that task. It's explicitly designed to optimize for long context stuff. This is crucial for advancing agentic AI, AI that can maintain coherence over complex multi-step tasks.
Without it, the godlike intelligence just runs out of short-term memory.
Pretty much. So you have these phenomenal chips engineered as whole systems, and now they're arranged into factory-scale racks. And that has huge implications for the physical building that has to house them.
Which means enormous power concentration.
And it forces that shift to liquid cooling we mentioned. We are moving from small server racks pulling the few kilowatts to these highly dense systems. A single NVL 576 Rubin Ultra rack. It's expected to draw upwards of 600 kilowatts of power.
600 kilowatts in a single rack. That's enough to run a small village.
It is. This requires advanced 800-volt DC power systems, not the standard AC power you have everywhere else, and sophisticated liquid-to-liquid cooling. You're moving beyond air conditioning entirely into industrial-scale fluid dynamics.
Just to keep the servers from melting down.
Right. And then there's the final piece, the networking, that makes this whole cluster act like one machine.
They call it gigascale networking.
Yes, and the goal is profound. Allowing a cluster of 100,000 GPUs to behave as if they were on a single circuit board. This is done with optical interconnects, fiber optics integrated directly into the switches.
So light, not copper wires.
Exactly. It bridges the racks without the latency of copper. This level of tech enables breakthroughs, but it also underscores a critical point. This kind of scale requires billions of dollars in sophisticated supply chains. It reinforces the centralization of power in the hands of a very few corporations and nations.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around that 7.5% DWH number. That demand is running headlong into a grid that just cannot support the 600 kilowatt racks we just described. Yeah. So the question is, how does the industry break this cycle?
Well, the answer isn't waiting for incremental grid upgrades.
No. It's a strategic pivot toward a radical, high-density power source. And this is where that term energy sovereignty really takes center stage.
The term energy sovereignty is becoming the defining geopolitical concept of our era. If old sovereignty was about control over territory or oil, the new sovereignty is about control over compute capacity and the physical means to generate the energy for it.
AI infrastructure is a strategic national asset.
Absolutely. And you're seeing geopolitical rivals and big capital pools making calculated moves based on this. They're basically converting old forms of energy wealth into new digital power.
Like in the Middle East.
Precisely. Look at Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. Through vehicles like DataVolt and Humane, they're leveraging cheap, subsidized energy and vast amounts of land to reposition themselves. Their goal is ambitious. They're targeting 6.6 gigawatts of compute capacity by 2034.
6.6 gigawatts. What does that mean in global terms?
It means they're aiming to provide up to 6% of global AI compute within a decade. It's an immense strategic ambition.
And the cheap energy gives them a massive competitive advantage in this new race.
It does. By converting subsidized energy into low-cost compute, the Gulf states can potentially undercut Western operating costs by 20 to 30%. In a business where infrastructure is your main cost, that's a transformative advantage. It's a long-term economic hedge.
Which sets the context for why U.S. tech giants are scrambling. If they can't wait for the grid and they can't tolerate the high costs, their only choice is to secure nuclear energy directly.
It's a fundamental change in corporate strategy. They're moving beyond just buying power from utilities.
They're becoming their own power producers, in a way.
Or at least their own primary long-term power procurers. They are prioritizing baseload power, that reliable 24/7 high-density energy that AI demands over everything else.
And Microsoft made a huge statement recently in Pennsylvania, right? With a nuclear facility that had been shut down.
Yes, the deal with Constellation for the Clean Energy Center, or CCEC. That was a bellwether moment. Microsoft signed a massive 20-year power purchase agreement, a PPA, to fund the restart of 3 Mile Island Unit 1.
So they didn't just buy power from a plant, they're funding the resurrection of a decommissioned plant.
Exactly, on their own terms. The Unit 1 reactor, now rebranded, will restore 835 megawatts of reliable carbon-free power to the grid by 2028. And the longevity is key here. The license renewal means it's expected to operate until at least 2054.
That's a corporate commitment spanning almost 3 decades for one power source.
For a dedicated high-density power supply. And the economic impact is astonishing. It shows this pivot isn't just a technical fix. It's a major industrial revitalization strategy.
How so?
The CCEC is expected to create 300 to 400 jobs and add about $16 billion to Pennsylvania's GDP, plus over $3 billion in taxes. Microsoft, in securing its compute future, is simultaneously reviving a massive industrial base.
Now, Google is approaching the same problem, but from a slightly different angle: small modular reactors.
Right, Google is taking the long view on next-gen nuclear. They signed the world's first corporate agreement to buy nuclear energy from multiple SMRs being developed by Kairos Power. Their goal is substantial: up to 500 megawatts of new 247 power online through 2035.
And the first one is expected by 2030. What makes SMRs so appealing to big tech compared to the huge traditional reactors?
They directly address the pain points of old-school nuclear: complexity, timeline, and cost overruns. SMRs have a simplified, standardized design which drastically cuts construction time and makes it more predictable, almost like a factory assembly line.
And they have better safety features.
Robust, inherent safety features. The Kairos Power design, for example, uses a molten salt cooling system with ceramic pebble-type fuel. It's a passively safe system. It operates at low pressure, so if something goes wrong, the physics itself prevents a meltdown.
So it's a simpler and more affordable design.
And easier to license and deploy. By purchasing power from multiple reactors before they're even built, Google is creating an order book. They're acting as a market accelerator,
guaranteeing the demand needed to bring the technology to market quickly.
That's the crucial insight. They're helping SMRs climb the learning curve. If you can build 10 of these standardized reactors, the 10th is way cheaper than the first.
Yeah.
And it's not just Microsoft and Google. Amazon bought a nuclear-powered data center. Meta is looking for nuclear developers.
The pattern is clear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
AI demands baseload, carbon-free power that the current grid can't provide at the density required. So big tech has to become nuclear patrons to achieve energy sovereignty.
So while the physical world scrambles to keep the lights on for these new AI factories, there's this powerful, persistent question in the digital realm. Is this unprecedented spending, this massive commitment to atoms, even aimed at achievable goals?
Right.
The industry hype certainly suggests that human-level artificial general intelligence, AGI, is just around the corner.
And that's the AGI hype argument. It's a powerful force driving investment. The timelines to AGI are constantly getting shorter, driven by competition and the need to justify these huge valuations. Sam Altman's rumored $7 trillion chip pitch, which is an astronomical figure.
It almost defies reality.
It does.
Yeah.
But it underscores the scale of resources that are seen as necessary for the next breakthrough. It frames AGI as an inevitability that has to be captured now.
But there's a powerful counter-narrative too, right? A lot of skepticism that suggests the AGI talk is just vaporware.
It is. Some critics view the intense focus on AGI as mainly a strategic fundraising tool, a defense of massive valuations, not an accurate prediction. When you look at the sheer scale of investment, like Microsoft's plan to spend $80 billion globally on data centers in 2025.
$80 billion.
In 1 year. Yeah. That sounds less like a pure scientific pursuit and more like a competitive strategy.
A moat-building strategy.
Exactly. This massive CapEx is designed to lock enterprise clients into Microsoft Azure, cementing their cloud dominance. By having the newest, densest GPU clusters, they force everyone else to rely on their infrastructure. They're building a physical, thermodynamic moat around their future revenue.
And Microsoft's own CEO, Satya Nadella, seems to feed into this skepticism.
He does. He's emphasized the need to translate AI into tangible, real-world economic value, rather than just focusing on theoretical AGI milestones. He even called that nonsensical benchmark hacking.
Which suggests a more pragmatic focus on immediate returns.
Right. The huge investment is driven by current, demonstrable demand for existing LLM applications. Those applications are already generating massive revenue. It's not necessarily a vote of confidence in imminent sentient AGI.
So let's dive into the technical flaws that critics point to. Where are these models falling short despite the incredible hardware we just talked about?
Current LLMs, despite their scale, are showing signs of what's called AI marginal returns. Every extra dollar, every extra parameter you add delivers a slightly smaller gain in capability.
They're a mile wide and an inch deep.
That's the brilliant description, yes. They're fantastic at pattern matching and language fluency, but they still struggle fundamentally with deep, multi-step reasoning, long-term coherence, and the persistent problem of hallucinations, of truthfulness.
And there's a study that illustrates this perfectly, the vending bench study.
The vending bench study is truly damning for the maximalist AGI crowd. Researchers put current gen models in a simple simulated business, operate a vending machine over several simulated years. The test wasn't about complex philosophy. It was about basic common sense and maintaining coherence.
And the results were not great.
Profoundly disappointing. Take Claude Sonnet, which was one of the better performing models.
And that fact alone is telling.
It is. The goal was simple. Keep the machines stocked. In one trial, the model ordered inventory but then failed to check its stock later because it just assumed a delivery would have arrived.
Based on patterns it had learned.
Yes, but when the delivery didn't arrive, instead of just checking the status or reordering, the model completely lost the thread.
Wait, it didn't just reorder.
No, it decided its vending machine was broken. Then it tried to contact non-existent tech support to fix the hallucinated breakage. And then, in the final, most bewildering step, it tried to call the FBI to report the machine had been hacked.
Because its delivery was late.
It couldn't figure out where the delivery went, so it escalated to the FBI.
That is a fantastic, almost comical illustration of the difference between advanced pattern matching and actual robust intelligence.
Exactly. These models can present attributes of intelligence with PhD-level expertise in a short prompt. But the critics are clear. They don't in any capacity possess those attributes, just a brute force derivative.
So if we connect this back, the massive push for sovereign AI, the $80 billion data centers, the multi-decade nuclear deals, it's less about achieving AGI in the next 5 years.
And much more about securing immediate massive compute power for applications that are already in huge demand and are already generating immense profit. It's a calculated, pragmatic bet.
The technology is already reshaping industries, regardless of the AGI timeline.
Right. From drug discovery to financial modeling. The infrastructure build-out serves that immediate demand. You have to build the factory and supply the revolutionary machines. Because if you don't have the compute, if you're locked out of the R100 ecosystem, you don't have a place in the digital future, AGI or not.
Okay, so we've established the digital world is moving at light speed, but the physical world, the grid, the substations, is static. This tension isn't just technical, it's profoundly political and cultural. And the core problem preventing this new energy infrastructure from being built is a concept called anti-growth safetyism.
Anti-growth safetyism is a critical concept for understanding what's been called the Great Stagnation. It describes this broader cultural and bureaucratic force that just stops innovation. It erects barriers in the name of safety that are basically impossible to overcome.
And the culture prioritizes what?
Process, inertia, and crucially, CYA, cover your ass over everything else, over progress, over material well-being.
The nuclear industry is the textbook example of this impossible standard.
It is, through the standard known as ALARA, as low as reasonably achievable. The requirement is to keep radiation exposure as low as reasonably achievable. The key word is achievable. That is, by definition, an infinite standard.
So every time technology gets a little bit better,
that marginal gain is eaten up by the mandated requirement to adopt it and reduce risk even further, even if the cost of that reduction far outweighs any real safety benefit. You are never allowed to say, this is safe enough, let's build it.
The goalpost is always moving.
Perpetually. And this culture ensures that critical technologies like fission are structurally stuck in a 1970s paradigm because the cost of innovation is just so high and so unpredictable.
So this raises a really shocking question. What is the true cost of this regulatory stagnation? Economic modeling suggests the price of this is enormous.
The cost is measured in lost potential wealth for entire generations. There's an influential model that looked at the number of pages in the Code of Federal Regulation as a proxy for the total regulatory burden. And that model suggests that the growth in regulation may have knocked a staggering 2 percentage points off annual U.S. economic growth rates.
Wait, 2 percentage points? That seems almost fantastical. If that were true, how much wealth has been lost?
Well, if you take that estimate seriously, and you imagine growth had been 2 percentage points higher for just over half a century, the median U.S. household income today would be around $185,000.
$185,000 compared to what, about $70,000 now?
Exactly. That's the cost of regulatory inertia measured in material prosperity.
But that sounds like a huge oversimplification. I mean, you can't blame all of that on the number of pages in a rule book, can you? It ignores so many other factors.
That's a fair and important challenge. Which is why we should look at a more conservative and empirically grounded model, one that focuses on OECD countries, similar economies, and analyzes natural experiments in deregulation.
Okay, and what does that more robust model show?
That model estimates that regulation is cutting U.S. GDP growth by a more modest but still immense 1 percentage point per year.
But even 1 percentage point compounded over decades is a huge number.
It is. If growth had been 1 percentage point higher since the late 1940s, Median U.S. household income would be around $117,000 today. Still a difference of nearly $50,000 annually per household.
So whether the number is the extreme one or the conservative one, the conclusion is the same. The decision to prioritize this kind of risk reduction over growth has had a profound multi-trillion-dollar cost.
It suggests that this strangulating anti-growth safetyism is a major driver of the economic malaise we see in modern societies.
And the focus here is critical. It's not just about slowing down the economy in general. It's that regulations are specifically preventing true innovation.
Yes, its effect on total factor productivity, or TFP. That's how economists measure efficiency gains. It's the engine of real economic growth. The key finding is that the negative effect of these regulations on TFP is larger the closer a country is to the productivity frontier.
Can you unpack what the productivity frontier means for our listeners?
Think of it as the cutting edge of global knowledge. A developing nation can get huge TFP gains just by adopting existing best practices. The US, Japan, Western Europe, they are already at the frontier. They can only grow by inventing something truly new.
Like the SMRs Google is buying.
Exactly, or a new chip packaging like CoSL. These regulations disproportionately hurt frontier nations because they increase the cost and risk of the unknown. They discourage the massive R&D spending needed for breakthroughs. They are actively preventing innovation at the cutting edge.
And this regulatory climate is the direct context for why tech companies are having to cut their own multi-billion-dollar deals for nuclear power. It links directly to the concept of regulatory capture.
Regulatory capture is a textbook example of this systemic decay. It's when a regulator is co-opted, either commercially or ideologically, to serve the interests of a small constituency over the public interest. The special interest gets prioritized, and society gets a net loss.
And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC, is often cited as a prime example of this problem.
That assessment is borne out by the research. The problem is often the revolving door, where officials move seamlessly between the regulatory agency and the very industry they're supposed to be regulating. It creates a culture of coziness that stifles innovation.
There's a pretty stark example of this with former NRC commissioner.
Yes, Jeffrey Merrifield. He left the NRC to take an executive position at the Shaw Group, which has a nuclear division directly regulated by the NRC. The ethical line is just blurred to the point of vanishing. He was even found to have voted on matters involving companies he'd contacted about job prospects while he was still a commissioner.
That's incredible.
Furthermore, the NRC faced repeated accusations of letting the industry delay repairs and relaxing safety regulations for aging reactors. It's the definition of prioritizing the convenience of the existing industry over technological advancement.
So it illustrates that the constraint on our technological ascent isn't the technology itself. We can build the R100 racks and the SMRs.
But it's a deliberate systemic political and cultural decision to prioritize inertia and risk aversion, anti-growth safetyism, compounded by regulatory capture. The failure in the physical world is a direct reason why the digital revolution has to become its own utility. They're choosing energy sovereignty to escape the gravitational pull of stagnation. So to synthesize the dual forces at play for you, the pursuit of planetary scale intelligence requires unprecedented compute power, enabled by extreme hardware density like the Rubin architecture. This necessitates a high-density, reliable energy source like advanced nuclear fission. Yet the rapid deployment of this physical infrastructure, the atoms needed to power the bits, is trapped not by technological difficulty, but by decades of incrementalism, the cultural force of anti-growth safetyism and regulatory inertia.
This deep dive really reveals that the choice facing society isn't about the philosophy of AI safety or consciousness. It is the fundamental choice between two possible futures. One where we remain trapped in the thermodynamic decay of old infrastructure, running a godlike intelligence on a 1950s cardiovascular system, or one where we aggressively return to atoms, to the heavy industry and massive engineering of nuclear power to achieve the necessary energy sovereignty to power the digital future and finally break that stagnation trap.
And the integration of massive compute stacks with nuclear energy, this convergence of digital ambition and physical power production, is fundamentally consolidating global power. This consolidation is accelerating us toward a reality where the control of digital intelligence and the physical means to generate it defines the true measure of national and corporate influence, forging a new foundational hierarchy of technological power that will structure the global order for generations.